the time, your gateway to the world. AFR! American Freedom Radio. Give it to them.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and happy Wednesday. It is May 15, 2013. Hope you are having a beautiful day. It's so good to have you join us here tonight. Soul Journeys Radio on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. We sure have a special and informative show for you tonight with Sidney Ross Singer. He is the author of several books, Dress to Kill, Get It Off, Get It Out, Get It Up, Panic in Paradise, and The Doctor Is Out, as well as the director of the Institute for the Study of Culturogenic Disease, located in Hawaii. His websites are killerculture.com or selfstudycenter.org. That's selfstudycenter.org. And many of the listeners know he's kind of influenced my Free the Boobies campaign and the farting campaign. And, just he talks about issues in his books that are obviously often overlooked and completely ignored and actually flat out lied about in mainstream media. So I'm so glad that he's bringing all these sensitive topics to the surface. Of course, when we scheduled this topic, we had no idea that we were going to have more boobs in the news to talk about. So thank you, Angelina Jolie, and a man-made gene that we're all supposed to be scared of now. But if you have any questions or comments tonight, please feel free to give us a call at 218-339-8525. That's 218-339-8525. And if you'd like to join us in the text chat, that's over at souljourneysradio.com. And, I forgot to forgot to mention, I left out rather, he is a medical anthropologist and has basically been in the industry for several decades. So welcome to the show, Sidney. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Oh, it's always my pleasure to be on your show, Christie. You're a lot of fun to chat with.
Thank you. You're fun, too. And
well, thank you.
Obviously, you know what you're doing, and I'm really passionate about, as we've discussed here, I was lied to, and I chose, I guess, I was definitely ignorant. I believed every lie that was fed to me for 30 years, which resulted in numerous ridiculous diagnoses, being paralyzed from the waist down, in a wheelchair, feeding and clothing me, cancer, lupus, MS, all of these things that were taught are incurable. So, when I came across your work, I'm like, damn, we got to learn more. You certainly have a lot to offer. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, where do you want to get started?
Well, we had intended on, we were definitely going to talk about the bra and the cancer issue, and then what happened in the news, I think, yesterday, Tomb Raider, or whatever her name is, I don't watch movies, but Laura Croft or something, allegedly has chopped off her breasts for fear of acquiring cancer at some point later in her life. So I think that's kind of a hot topic right now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the prophylactic mastectomies, which is what we're talking about, it's to prevent the disease, you get rid of the breasts. And actually, it's a real popular surgery now, getting more and more so because it makes a lot of money for medicine. They don't even know how effective it's going to be in the long run. It's experimental. Yeah. They don't remove all the breast tissue, so you can still get breast cancer, and some women have after this procedure.
But isn't it a systemic issue? I mean, you can chop off your arm for fear that you're going to get arm cancer, but if you have the habits that contribute to cancer, you're going to get it somewhere else.
Well, that's, you got to understand also, you're right, you got to understand what they're testing here. When they're testing for the BRCA genes, those genes presumably are the normal. We have these genes in our bodies, and if they get mutated to where they don't work properly, it seems that it interferes with the immune process and the immune reaction and suppressor cells that stop cancers. So they found that by looking at the history of people with cancer, specifically breast cancer and ovarian cancer, and they found these certain genetic patterns, but they're not sure if it's really due to the genes in these families or due to environment and cultural factors. So it's really a lot of voodoo science. And what really disturbs me, Christie, is that people are taking these genetic tests as like, not in a scientific way, but almost in a religious way, like this is my fate. I've just, my tea leaves have been just read, or I went to some soothsayer and they looked into a crystal ball and they're telling me I have a high chance of getting cancer. Now, if you have these mutations in these genes, then it just says that you have a higher risk, but it doesn't say you're going to get it. And in fact, it's only 60, well, it's a lot, but 60% of the women who have this gene mutation, they say will go on, which means 40% won't. So it's not, and they say 12% of the public for these two cancers, I believe it was for both cancers, they were saying 12% might get these cancers anyway in the general public. But if you happen to have these mutations, it increases your chances about 5 times. So that's what they're saying on this mutation. But whether treating it with tamoxifen, which is a drug they use for breast cancer prevention, or doing surgery, they don't even know if those are going to help. They have no idea. They don't know if you're going to get it if you have the mutation. So why are people getting these? It's because they have such faith in medicine, and they're so freaked out that they're hoping that if I take this test and it's negative, maybe I'll be saved. But actually, they'll tell you that even if you're negative, you might still get cancer, breast cancer, or any of these cancers. These gene mutations don't just apply to breast and ovarian. It's a general mechanism in your body and how it fights cancer that these genes apparently are related to. And they don't have all the information on this, realize. This is all current research. And the more women who participate and get genetic testing and go for they're taking drugs or doing surgery if they're positive as a way of lowering their chances of getting breast cancer later. They don't know if those are going to work. So essentially, everyone is being enrolled in a research study that they're doing on these genetic markers, and they're ignoring every other aspect. This, by the way, only applies to a very small percentage of breast cancer cases are genetic, very small percentage. The biggest incidence cause of breast cancer is what you do to yourself, not what the way you're constructed. And it's with bras and breast cancer and the constriction caused by bras and all the pollution that we put in our bodies, and that's what's causing cancers. Some people have a genetic tendency, but that's a small background amount. Like men have it too. But it's the reason we have so much breast cancer is because of these other factors that they're ignoring because there's no money in it, because it doesn't fit their chemical model. You got to understand, one of the things about medicine is that we're talking about one paradigm of approaching disease. The paradigm that considers people in biochemical terms and tries to come up with drug solutions, pharmacological solutions, so that you can treat diseases and their symptoms with drugs. That's what the medical system is about, or surgery. Yeah. But that's what the medical system does. It identifies conditions and gives them drug regimens, and because the whole medical system is run by the drug companies, and alternative medicine is relegated to a very, they're outside the mainstream for the most part, and they're another story. But although they copy the paradigm to some degree, you take an herb instead of taking a drug. Very few people are looking at what's causing the problems. They're making money in the treatment of it, so the cause is something they don't want to really get into, and they don't even think about, and it's not their job. It's like their job is to come up with drug treatments, and if they can use a genetic marker, it completely disempowers you as a person to take care of, to affect this. It's like, it's fatalistic, and it's in you, the way you're built. You are a defective person, and you need to come to us regularly for checkups and more testing and take these experimental procedures so that we can maybe stop this thing, which we can't guarantee you're going to get just because of this, but you might. It's a higher chance. So it's just total scare tactics and salesmanship.
Totally.
Totally.
And they're trying to make breast cancer like a separate disease, right? It's not just cancer anymore. It's breast cancer, and your breasts are really, really special and dangerous. So, it just makes sense to cut them off, right?
Well, these women, Angelina Jolie already probably had implants. So, and with so much implants being promoted, to me, I think of cosmetic surgeons that do this in the same way I think about body piercers. They're doing something completely unnecessary to the body for completely cultural reasons, and it's not good for you. It's intervening. When a woman gets implants, she's committing to a lifetime of breast reconstruction issues. Those implants shift. She's going to have to come back for surgery. They could leak. She could get infections and autoimmune diseases, and they move and they do. It's as soon as you start monkeying with it, you've now opened up Pandora's box for the rest of your life. So they have you as a constant customer. They love this stuff. They're turning people, that's what it's all about. The medical industry is a business like every other. And why we treat them as anything separate is this weird anachronism from the past where they might have had ethics or something. Although the history of medicine is filled with this type of stuff, it's always been like this. We think doctors are different. And we give them special privileges, and we give them so much money, and they have so much power, when in actuality they're just like the medicine shows that we used to have in the past with people selling, their elixirs. And, it's just they have a theory, they have a product, and they want us to use it as much as possible. And you have to be really a consumer beware. But we're trained to be ignorant about the whole thing. They don't teach us about medicine in schools, like public schools for kids. They don't learn about their bodies in any serious way. They don't learn how to take care of themselves. They don't learn how to do self-massage. They don't learn how to feel, to sense how their bodies feel and how they should be working optimally. So we're kept dependent and we're kept ignorant. It's planned ignorance. So we are dependent on these, and it's not just medicine. It's like law, mechanic work, all the things we should be learning how to take care of ourselves in schools, but we're taught to depend on professions. And then these professionals have special privileges when it comes to medicine. They're dealing with your life. So you're completely disempowered, and your life is in their hands, and they're frightening people like crazy. And, as a result, we have the biggest expense in our nation is healthcare. It is really sickness treatment and creation for an industry that thrives off of that.
Definitely. Very well said, Sydney. It's just, okay, so they're suggesting that maybe this gene makes you more predetermined to acquire breast cancer. So
other cancers too.
The solution... Okay, so the solution is to chop them off and then fill them up with implants. But their own studies, their own research, even the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention admit that not only, let's just say that their treatment is effective. We'll just assume that that's true. If you have breast implants in you, they tell you they won't be able to detect it at all in the first place. Never mind the leaking and all of the other problems associated with it as well. So don't breast implants contribute to cancer?
They contribute to the problem and make it difficult to detect things, and I think they also impair the lymphatic circulation within the breast, which is one of the biggest issues on the bra. That's what we believe is a primary mechanism. There's probably others as well, but like immobilizing the breast so they don't move and heating the breast. But the whole idea of changing breast shape, either internally or externally, what it's going to do is it's going to apply pressure to the delicate lymphatic vessels, which are these microscopic little tubules that are so easily compressed, and they drain fluid from our tissues. The breasts are filled with lymphatics, and if they go to the lymph nodes, mostly in the armpits, there are lymph nodes there, and that filters out the fluid from the breast that's cleansed out. So if there's toxins, debris, cancer cells, whatever is in that tissue flushes out this way, and if you impair that with a constrictive device like a bra that's pushing the breast into a different shape, and as it pushes the breast, it's compressing the tissue, and pressure cuts off the lymphatics. So women are getting backup of this fluid, which is causing the breast to actually get tender and sore and swollen and heavy, and then cysts form, and they're painful, and they're usually worse when your period comes because your estrogen is higher, and estrogen is a female hormone that causes more fluid retention. So your breasts are even bigger when your period's coming, and women are wearing the same bra size, so they're even tighter at that time, and their cysts are getting bigger and painful. That's why they know their period's coming. Oh, my breasts are sore. They stop wearing a bra, all of that stops.
I remember those days. Oh my gosh, it was so painful, which of course I don't have any of that now, so I don't even know when my period's going to come anymore.
Well, that's...
Actually, I do, because it is, that was kind of a joke. I do because of the moon. Yeah. It's pretty synced up with the moon, but... Seriously, so I was looking at, I know you sent me some articles from cancer.gov, what are they called, the National Cancer Institute, but I was looking at one at the same time, actually, and I wanted to share with everyone their own words in the question that they pose: how effective is a preventative mastectomy in preventing or reducing the risk of breast cancer? But it is that time.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarian. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
And thanks for joining us here tonight, Soul Journeys Radio on AmericanFreedomRadio.com with our special guest tonight, Sidney Ross Singer. He is the director of the Institute for the Study of Culturogenic Disease, Self-Study Center. .org is the website, or killerculture.com. He has tons of great articles, blogs, information there, as well as his books, Dress to Kill, which we've talked about previously, Get It Out, one of my favorites, Get It Off, Get It Up, The Doctor Is Out, and Panic in Paradise. But we've been talking about the issue with breast cancer and Angelina Jolie, and before we went to break, I wanted to share with you some information from cancer.gov, which is the National Cancer Institute. They call it the fact sheet. So this article has to do with preventative mastectomy. So they ask, how effective is preventative mastectomy in preventing or reducing the risk of breast cancer? And here in their own words, they even admit they don't even know. So I'll just read to you the whole thing word for word, and I posted the link in the text chat at souljourneysradio.com if you want to check it out. But they say existing data suggest that preventative mastectomy may significantly reduce the chance of developing breast cancer in moderate and high-risk women. However, no one can be certain that this procedure will protect an individual woman from breast cancer. Breast tissue is widely distributed on the chest wall and can sometimes be found in the armpit, above the collarbone, and as far down as the abdomen. Because it's impossible for a surgeon to remove all breast tissue, breast cancer can still develop in the small amount of remaining tissue. So, I mean, how are we supposed to trust these guys at all? Are they just pretty much counting on nobody actually looking into anything other than a few sound bites we hear on the news?
I think once they get people scared enough with all of their, awareness, I mean, that's what it's all about. The breast cancer awareness is making people scared. Then people are willing to do anything. And there's another thing I wanted to quote. They say, this is from their website, people who receive a positive test result from the genetic test may feel anxious, depressed, or angry. They may choose to undergo preventative measures, such as prophylactic surgery, that have serious long-term implications and whose effectiveness is uncertain. So again, they're admitting it's uncertain if it will work. But I find this quite interesting. If you get a positive test result, you may feel anxious, depressed, or angry. And given that mindset, you then may choose surgery. It seems to me like they've backed you. That's sales. That's total salesmanship.
Yes.
They get you depressed, angry, and anxious, and then you choose surgery, which can kill you. Just the surgery.
Yeah, and they've got a bunch of drugs for that too, right? Prozac.
Yeah, exactly. And then I love this one.
Brilliant salesmanship.
Well, this one is even better. I think it shows the mindset of these people. It says people who receive a negative test result, a negative, which means you don't have the mutation, they may experience survivor guilt by knowledge that they likely do not have an increased risk of developing a disease that affects one or more loved ones.
Oh,
Can you
shit.
imagine
Kill me
that?
now.
Can you imagine? It's like, oh, no, I'm not going to die with the rest of you, I have guilt. I mean, this is insane. The people who think about this, you get a negative result and you're going to feel guilty because you probably want to have a positive result, get all that attention. Imagine the attention you're going to get from the nurses and the doctors. It's really insane. It's totally insane. It's all salesmanship. And I really feel bad, though, when a woman like Angelina Jolie does this, how many girls are going to copy her, how many teenagers are going to think. I mean, and they're selling this procedure. And my guess is the time will come when they'll say in the future, oh, we discovered that it doesn't seem to help. They don't have any survival data. They don't know. So the women who are taking this are basically enrolling in a study. And it's going to be a future research project to look and see, hey, did this help? Because that's the way medicine works. They don't necessarily know up front. I'll give you another great example. You know cholesterol? It's like the evil thing coursing through our veins. And people take this anti-cholesterol drugs like Lipitor or whatever to lower your cholesterol. You can't have cholesterol. Well, the fact is they'll then admit, and they've been admitting this now for like 30 years, that they don't know whether these cholesterol-lowering drugs will have any effect on high blood pressure or heart disease. Yeah. And yet that's the reason people are taking them, because they assume that I'm going to get these plaques which have cholesterol in them. Therefore, the logic that doesn't make any sense that we're being sold is that, okay, if cholesterol is in the plaques, then cholesterol is bad because plaques are bad. So get rid of the cholesterol and then maybe we'll be able to prevent the problems of plaques, which is hardening of the arteries, which increases blood pressure and heart disease. So that's their reasoning, but they've never been able to, in decades of using these drugs, they've not been able to show that it reduces heart disease or high blood pressure. And when you think about, why are you taking these drugs, cholesterol is a very important thing, of course, and we need it. We synthesize our steroid hormones with cholesterol, and cholesterol is also used like a patch on on the membranes, cell membranes. They have cholesterol in them and helps the fluidity of a membrane because of the way cholesterol is shaped. And it's so it's like a good oil type of a thing, and we need it. It's very healing, and that's probably why we have plaques with cholesterol in it, because we're probably taking in all these chemical contaminants. Like, let's say you're jogging or driving along the freeway. You are scarfing in everybody's exhaust. You're like in a tunnel of exhaust. And you don't even smell it anymore because you're in it so much. You're desensitized to the smell of the highway. So all of this stuff goes into your lungs, immediately gets absorbed into your bloodstream, and it courses through your arteries, veins, and then the heart and then the arteries. And these chemicals are irritating. They irritate your throat, they irritate your lungs, and they irritate your blood vessels. So what does the body do when it's irritated? Well, it tries to have a scab. And inside blood vessels, the scab is made up of cholesterol. So the reason we have the cholesterol scabs and plaques that end up forming calcium deposits on it and so forth, but the reason these scabs are forming, there's a cause. The cause is the irritation. The irritation is being introduced by the pollution. So instead of stopping the mechanism, that's what medicine does all the time. They look at the symptom, which is really your body's way of coping with an insult. And like whether it's a fever or creating plaques with cholesterol or vomiting or coughing or sneezing, there's a lot of things we do, even high blood pressure. These are defense mechanisms that your body needs to survive. And if we stop these mechanisms with drugs, which is what medicine does, we're actually interfering with our body's way of trying to auto-regulate and control things. By the way, if that sounds weird about blood pressure, high blood pressure being a defense mechanism, maybe I should explain that.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, because if you think about it, if you have to perfuse all of your organs in your body, obviously with blood, and so it needs circulation, or it dies. And the way your body the way your body's going to cope with an organ that has perhaps temporarily impaired circulation. Like, let's say you have a liver issue, and your liver now has some scarring in it from drinking or whatever, and you have a congested liver. Your body has to get the blood through the liver, and it's going to need more pressure for that. So the blood pressure in the body is going to accommodate certain organs that may be congested and need extra pressure just to get the blood through. So high blood pressure could be a coping mechanism. And oftentimes when people take medication for high blood pressure, they'll go into a statistical norm, which is a ridiculous. I have a puppy playing.
Hi, babies. They want to play too.
Yeah, the blood pressure thing is really interesting because they try to get you into a statistical area of 120/80, which is not necessarily what's right for you as an individual. And it's an average statistically, and people are above and below that in reality. So when you try to conform to an average, which doctors try patients to do, they give you a drug to try to alter your body's physiology to make the results look like some sort of average median. And your personal needs may be outside of that. You may need higher pressure to function properly, and you may need lower pressure. You're normally healthy at lower pressure. On the other hand, if you give people a drug then, and let's say they needed the higher pressure, then the low pressure can cause them to faint. They'll be low energy. They can get depressed. They can have injuries. So a lot of times people will control their blood pressure, and it may make the doctor happy, but it's really making you sick. Your higher pressure could be fine. So the blood pressure is another big scam. Medicine loves to get people on lifetime medication regimens. So there's a lot of medication scams about that. As soon as go ahead.
Oh, I'm not an MD or anything, but just my personal experience, every single person I have met who has been taking these drugs for either to lower cholesterol or high blood pressure, which it seems to me they always go hand in hand, they all have heart problems. Not only that, a couple years or so later, they end up with other diseases, side effects of the initial drugs that were supposed to protect them. So
that's right.
I don't know. Am I just living in a bubble here? Are there people experiencing results from these drugs elsewhere that I just don't know about?
Some people probably benefit from some of these drugs some of the time, but more people are getting them that don't benefit from them than is ever being admitted by the medical industry. And, they have such a position of power and influence, and they're only one modality of healthcare. If you have any condition, let's say high blood pressure, and, what's causing it, they never like to answer that. And they say if they can't see the cause as an obvious thing, then they call it essential hypertension. And they say it's just essential is a word that they use that just means we don't know. And, they might also use a word like idiopathic, which means the same thing. It's like, oh, well, it's just something you seem to have. And, they use a Latin word that means I don't know, and it sounds like they know because they said it in Latin.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if let's say you have high blood pressure, it could be because you're taking too much salt in your diet. Maybe you're eating like tons of salt. And by the way, don't get rid of your salt. Salt is very important. And the whole
sea salt.
Say again?
To switch it to sea salt. Throw out the white bleached iodized crap and get some natural sea salt with minerals.
Well, there's also the quantity. I mean, maybe you go to Chinese restaurants a lot and they put MSG in it, and so you get all these other salts that could be making you retain water, and as you retain water, that increases your pressure. I mean, the causes of blood pressure, are the pumping of the heart is one, the resilience of your blood vessels is another, and the amount of fluid in your system is the other one. So they try to control blood pressure by either making you giving you a diuretic, like Lasix or something, to make you urinate out a lot of the fluid. That lowers the pressure. Or they give you drugs that actually change the pressure of your heart's beating. So it calms your heart and doesn't make it beat as hard, and it slows it down. Or they can give you drugs that affect your the tone of your blood vessels. If they're really hard, then the pressure is higher than if they're flexible and soft. So all of these things affect your blood pressure. If you had hot dogs for lunch, all the nitrates in your food, nitrates are a vasodilator, and they cause your blood vessels to become really flaccid, just weak, and it makes your pressure shoot down. That's why after a nice pastrami sandwich, you'll have to take a nap because, it just knocks you out because it lowers your pressure so much. And in fact, this is interesting. People who worked at nitrate mines, where that's mined, and the miners get exposed to nitrates all the time, and they were getting heart attacks after their days off because their bodies went into they compensate for the fact that the nitrates are always weakening the blood vessels.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarian. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
Yo, what's up? Check this out. The voice of the revolution. American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for joining us here tonight. Soul Journeys Radio on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. How our culture is killing us is the topic tonight with Sydney Ross Singer. And we left off talking about blood pressure and nitrate withdrawal, as well as some of the causes you wanted to get into. So please continue.
Well, what I was trying to say was that there's a lot of reasons for high blood pressure, and just because you have, and high, of course, is relative to someone else.
Yes.
So as soon as you're even talking words like I have high or low, it should just be for you. So if your body is comfortable at a certain pressure, and then relative to that, you get a higher pressure, you know something's going on in your body. But if you have a normal, healthy, you feel normal, healthy, and nothing's wrong with you, and your blood pressure is higher than the norm for the population as an average.
Yeah, according to what they say is normal.
Right, and then that's something you don't have to take so seriously. I mean, you have to know that your body is unique in some ways, and it's going to have its own regulatory needs, and it pretty much knows what it's doing most of the time, unless we interfere with it. But let's talk back about there was something you said during the break you wanted to mention about the breast cancer issue.
Yeah, I was just kind of laughing at on the link here. I'll post it here in the chat again, at least for our chatters. But I guess anyone can go to cancer.gov and search for BRCA and cancer risk and genetic testing, and that'll come up. But in number 11, they ask, what are the options for a person who has had a positive test result? And again, I don't think we really, you know what, let's get into this first. The test and the gene itself, and how a company is able to patent a gene they want us to be afraid that we might have.
Well, they certainly patent the test, and any genes that are patented are, I know it sounds weird to think you can patent a gene because it's a natural thing, but the way biochemically that they have to go through to cut up DNA to develop this segment, this fragment that they call a gene, that particular fragment is their creation with their process, and that's how, and unfortunately the Supreme Court is seeing that as a unique creation, like a copyright. That, it's like I can use using words to write something, and it's words that everybody has, but your unique combination of those words you can copyright. Well, here they're using genes that everybody has, but they're unique cutting up of those genes into units, which they then could use for testing and for other types of things that are all proprietary. It's all proprietary. So, and it's patentable, and that's the nature of the world that we're in. That's how they can even patent a genetically modified organism, because they're taking nature and they're mixing it up in a unique way, just like you mix up words in a unique way to make an essay, and that's yours, and that's theirs. That's their patented product.
Okay, so this company, they have patented not only the gene, but the machine, which, by the way, is the only one that can test you for the gene that they discovered and patented at $4,000 per test. But let's say you go and take that test. Now, getting back to cancer.gov, they ask again, what are the options for a person who has a positive test result? The options they give you are 1, surveillance, which means, of course, mammograms, which have been proven to be unreliable, ineffective, and to cause or contribute to cancer. 2, surgery, cut them off and rebuild new ones with something that, again, causes cancer. Then they mention risk avoidance, but they don't even tell you what it is. And then the last suggestion they have as your solution is chemo prevention. Sounds like we got lots of choices there, huh?
Well, that's what they work. That's their work. If this was being done by chiropractors, they would say get regular adjustments. And if it was being done by homeopaths or acupuncturists, they would all have their own solutions. And that's one of the points I've been trying to make is the whole medical paradigm, the model of medicine is only one option among many, but it's gotten a political advantage. It's also, so the government thinks that's the only option. So when they give us these things coming from the government, they're not talking about all the other things to do, the other causes. Their answers are chemical. And chemoprevention means taking a drug to prevent a disease. Think about that for a moment. That's an oxymoron. It's a contradiction. Because how do you treat something? How do you prevent something by treating it? The only ones that make sense to is the treatment industry. And they've made it so that their detection is so sensitive now. They're looking at pre-cancers. Like they even have pre-high blood pressure. I mean, they have pre. Their whole goal is, this is the detection and treatment industry. That's how I refer to them. They're the disease detection and treatment. And they want the earliest detection possible because in their minds it means they close the sale earlier. And they can show you're going to possibly get this. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, that the breast cancer statistics are so high. Because the more they have these pre-cancers that they call cancers, they list them as so it becomes like embryonic to the point where they're now even saying if you have the gene for it, even if you have no signs of it whatsoever right now, if you have this mutation in this gene, then you're precancerous enough that we're willing to cut your breasts off and drug you. Even if you have no symptoms, they're telling you to do, and that's the way of the future. Unfortunately, and you don't have to participate in that future, but where the money obviously is going, they want to have genetic tests for several reasons. Number one, they're expensive as hell, and it makes them a lot of money. Number two, if you have a positive, they got you hooked for life with everything they could think of because you're scared now. And if you have a negative, they tell you it could be a false negative and you can get it anyway, so don't go away so fast. Okay? And so they got you either way. As soon as you take their test, you've basically it's like you're in church sticking your tongue out for communion. You've accepted them, and it's the church of medicine, and they will divine your future by looking at your genes and telling you the likelihood, although they can't tell you specifically, and they'll admit that. They'll never say that having this mutation will cause you to get cancer. They'll say, we can't say. We don't know if you're going to get cancer, but it's more likely. Now, you could say that by looking at a person with their lifestyle and tell it's more likely than other people, depending on what they're doing to themselves. Yes. But they want to keep this out of your control. They want this to be something that, you can't look at your genes. You are not able to look at your own genes.
So you have to go to them for them to tell you.
It's complete loss of empowerment. And they're pushing that because it's so expensive. They got you hooked. They got you afraid. They got to treat you no matter what, coming and going. And then they'll so that's what really genetics represents. It's pre-cancer. In a way, if you take this to its logical conclusion, we're all going to die. In a way, we're all pre-death.
Exactly. From the day we were born. We all have a pre-genetic disposition to die.
Exactly. And it's just a matter of them detecting it and treating it as soon as possible. And, when you take this to other questions, like, for example, should you get routine exams to know if you're healthy? Now, obviously, if you feel healthy and you're working fine and you have no problems, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? Leave it alone. But according to medicine, which makes money treating these and detecting these diseases, they want you to think that you don't really know if you're healthy. Your colon may have a polyp that may become a cancer. You better get it looked at because you don't know. The hidden disease inside is lurking and can come forth and destroy you at any moment. And we have the tools to look inside and tell whether you may have, so you don't know if you're healthy until we tell you. And we might not even know even then because we'll admit, we meaning the medical industry, which I'm not part of, by the way, that they admit that they're false positives and false negatives. So really, you're still like crapshoot, but you're taking they are taking the pressure, putting it on you and then taking it on them. They give you the fear, they give you the worry, and they make you feel like you can't know if you're well until you use them, and then get preventative drugs and preventative surgeries and keep in their care all of your life with regular. That's one of the things I really worry about Obamacare or any other type of national health insurance. I don't want anybody, it's going to increase care. It's going to increase medicine. And there was a very interesting article that came out recently that I was seeing we'll talk about it after the break.
Yeah, hold that right there. We're going to be right back after these few short minutes.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarian. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
No rules, no rules. No taboo topics, no taboo topics. No fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
All right. Welcome back. Top of the second hour here tonight. Soul Journeys Radio on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Our special guest tonight is Sidney Ross Singer. He is a medical anthropologist, the author of several groundbreaking and controversial health books, as well as the director of the Institute for the Study of Culturogenic Disease, located in Hawaii. His website is killerculture.com, and tons of useful information there. So definitely check it out. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give us a call, 218-339-8525. That's 218-339-8525. And if you'd like to join our happy little family in the text chat, that's over at souljourneysradio.com. And I know we're kind of having fun in the text chat, but we are going to kind of get into the information overload after Sydney finishes up. You were going to share with us some studies on Medicare and some really shocking ones that we discussed during the break. So let's hear it.
Well, a lot of people assume that if only everyone had access to medical care, they would be healthier. But what they've found now is when you give people access to health care, they are no healthier. And in fact, there have been studies that show that when doctors go on strike and stop working, the death rate goes down. So basically, what we're getting from medicine is not necessarily making us any better. And I discovered that in medical school. That's why I quit medicine. One of the reasons I quit, I just was. This is back in I was in the class of 93, I think. I started medical school in 89. And I was not only disillusioned by all of the animal research. That was a big thing for me. I wanted to mention that because I think when you understand the field of medicine, you have to understand who these people, what this profession is, and how they think of life and people and animals. I think that's all a very important part of it. And, the history of medicine is really steeped in animal research and vivisection. Back in the 1800s, people like Claude Bernard were doing physiology studies on dogs without anesthetic, and these animals were screaming, and it was terrible. And this this cruelty to animals was just part of the nature of medical research. They use animals as guinea pigs. I mean, that's how we can have the expression, a guinea pig.
Wow.
And whether or not that applies to humans is always a question, because species are different. And they have different reactions to drugs that you sometimes wouldn't expect. And so when you...
Uh-oh. Okay.
Really brought to that.
Oh, Sydney, you just cut out for a moment there. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's just one of those things. Not your fault. So maybe if you could rewind like 30 seconds.
Oh well. Well, I was saying how medicine, the training in medicine is really steeped in animal research and in animal cruelty, and my refusal to do the dog labs, which is an unnecessary training for medical students in school to try to desensitize them. You have to kill a dog and in the process and cut out its heart, and I was told you need to feel and smell the blood on your hands in order to get the experience. They didn't even want to give me an alternative. I went to the University of Texas at Galveston, and I was in the MD PhD program. The PhD program was in medical humanities, which teaches a whole bunch of stuff like ethics and all of that. And my friends in that department, I mean, the faculty, they respected my desire to get an exemption from these dog labs and get an alternative on ethical grounds. Because I used to be a biochemist before that, and I was a graduate student in biochemistry at Duke University, and that years before, and I had exposure to animal research, and that turned me off completely. And I didn't want to do this in med school. So I became a real pariah in medical school. I mean, I had to threaten the school to be given a choice to be let out of the lab. And they did ultimately let me out. But as a result, they required students ever since then to sign a statement that they'll do whatever they're told to do, even if they have moral objections to it. They didn't like my having an independent mind, which is an important thing. You know, medicine is about doctors, medical students, and the people who become doctors. You know, they're selected on the basis of their ability to take tests. And even the board exams and the exams in medical school, they're multiple choice, you know. So it's a test-taking thing. It's conformity. You don't want independent thinkers. You want people who will follow protocol. It's very, very regimented, like the military. And you don't get out of line. You don't rat out any other doctors. Everybody is like in a club. And I was getting in that club, and I was getting the privileges of as a medical student of being able to experiment on patients if I wanted to, because that's something you have to also know. The teaching hospitals where a lot of medical schools are, they need to have people to practice on, and so the poor people end up being treated in these big hospitals and exploited by the students, because they're exploited because they have to be like I was there. They were doing a biopsy, a bone marrow biopsy. This is an example where they take this tool and they dig it into the marrow of the bone and take a core sample, and it's very painful. And the woman was in her hospital bed, and despite being under anesthetic, she was writhing in pain. And you know, then the doctor said to one of the students,
Uh-oh. Okay, looks like our connection is forcing us to take another short break. Oh, you're back. Okay, we left off where you were. It was literally just like 10 seconds, not that much at all. So you were, they were doing the procedure on the woman who, you know, even under anesthesia was feeling all sorts of pain.
And then they had the students practice it because they have to practice doing one, even though that wasn't necessary for the patient, and in fact harmed her. But the interesting thing was, the doctor said, who was overseeing all this, he said, "Don't worry, the anesthetic we're using causes amnesia." And I asked very naively, "Well, why is that important?" And he said, "Because that way she won't remember the pain if we want to do it again next week." So this is the kind of manipulation that goes on patients. So when you have the medical profession they don't respect the suffering that they do to animals. They don't even think about that.
Or people.
Well, that's the thing. They train you first. It's desensitizing on different animals until you work your way up to people. And by the time you've gotten through medical school, you've read about sewing the eyelids shut of monkeys to study, the development of the retina, and about every drug you can imagine, what it does in dogs when you overdose them, or what it does in this or that. I mean, and the guy who I had to appeal to at my school to get out of the dog lab, he ran the burn center, where they actually literally would burn animals and then try to treat the burns. They'd make them breathe superheated air, and they'd flamethrow a dog. It's very, very stressful to experience that for me. And I really felt that this was not a healing profession. And I was 30 years old at the time, so I had a mind of my own. I wasn't like a 22-year-old out of college, very malleable student that they could just, you do it this way, you think this way. And I started realizing that there was no prevention training, there was nothing in nutrition, there was nothing in prevention. I mean, they didn't care about that. It was all about basically figuring out what kind of drug to give people for different symptoms. That's what you do, and or surgery. And I think people need to know when they go to a doctor the kind of training that person has, the lack of empathy that they're going to have, that you become really just you almost like a dehumanized object.
Yes. Yeah, total dehumanization. No wonder why we are in such a, killerculture.com, or why we basically celebrate self-mutilation.
That's right. That's right.
Gosh, whether circumcision, breast surgery, whatever, it's ridiculous. Oh, my gosh. Wow.
And people, though, what I've discovered that really is strange about humans. I mean, I'm a medical anthropologist because I also have graduate training in anthropology, so I've integrated all of my knowledge to try to figure out what are we doing to ourselves that's making us sick, using just awareness of our culture and a sensitivity to what we do, because people normally do things without even reflecting. So I'm very reflective. Am I still there? Can you still hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, good.
Coming through perfect.
So what really people need, they need to conform almost more than anything else. I mean, why do women wear bras? Even when it hurts them, like they'll say, the first thing I do when I come home is take off my bra. It's so uncomfortable. Well, why do you do it? Why do you wear the high heels that's obviously deforming your feet and causing back issues, and also hammer toes and other, fungus and other problems? Shoes are another thing that we don't even think about. But that's like foot binding. And one of the sites of cancer, the highest site of skin cancer, one of the highest sites, is on the bottom of your foot. So it's got nothing to do with sun or any of that, blaming, normal things. It's actually, if you smell the chemicals that are in your shoes, I mean, my God.
I had no idea about that. So, wow, on the bottom of our feet. Amazing.
Yeah, so what's happening is your feet are marinating in a chemical brew that as you sweat in your socks, if you're wearing socks, and if you're not, it's even worse, of course, but you're sitting, smell your shoes. I'm not talking about bad foot odor. The chemical odor, like a brand new shoe. Go into a shoe store. I mean, it'll knock you over when you walk in if you're sensitive.
It totally does. I have the solution, though, Sid. We can just chop off our feet. We can prevent that.
Well, actually, barefoot is a nice option. Barefoot is really nice. And living in Hawaii, we're barefoot most of the time. But it was really interesting when we were on the mainland years ago. We went to go shopping at a Salvation Army thrift store, and they wouldn't let us in barefoot. And I thought, I thought, if we were poor and we needed shoes, and they have shoes inside, we're barefoot. We come in to get the shoes. They wouldn't let us in because we were barefoot.
That's true. We get those signs all the time, right? No shoes, no shirt, no service. Ridiculous.
Yeah, interesting. It's like no bra. At least they don't say no bra, no service.
Yeah, that's just our employers. Or some of them.
So I think, what happens is people are more fearful of not conforming to societal norms and looking different and being weird, that they're willing to subordinate themselves and subvert their health as a result. And when you tell them these answers, I mean, we've discovered, I really hope your listeners go to our website, killerculture.com. There's a self-study center that's built into the site. They're not separate anymore. They're connected.
Okay.
And what a self-study is we give people ideas of what the different lifestyles could be causing your health problems. And we suggest you just stop those. Like, obviously, with bras, if you're wearing a bra too tight for too long a day, you're going to be constricting your breasts and impairing circulation, and that can cause a problem. I mean, that's a simple thing to understand. So what we say is try going bra-free for a month or so and see how you feel. Let your body be the guide. You don't need a double-blind study done by some researchers like you just do it on yourself. Because these are simple lifestyle changes, and if it works for you, that's all you needed to know. And usually, over 90% of the time, women are like, you went through this, so
yes, I did. Once I went braless, it's like there's nothing anyone can do to get me to put one on again. Nothing.
But what happened in your mind before that? Before I talked to you, you were sort of aware of it, but there was still that pressure, right? There's still, we feel we need to conform. We're social animals. And if everybody else is walking around with, something sticking out of their eye, most likely we're going to poke ourselves in the eye, too, just to look like everybody else. Although we'll have trouble seeing them with things in our eyes. But
definitely. So one of the things I talked about before is, I wasn't wearing a bra every day, thankfully, but that I chalked it up to laziness. I had no reason to leave the house, so I put on something that makes me feel uncomfortable. It wasn't because I knew anything about the connection, and it wasn't because I knew that it would help my breasts actually lift or reduce the cyst I had on my left breast, or I didn't know any of that. I just knew it didn't feel good and I'm at home, so I put one on type thing. Right. But initially I'm like, well, I kind of have to wear one at work, which, was only 3, maybe 4 days a week at the time, but that's been over a year ago. So I've been 100% bra-free this entire year. I've talked about some of these things in videos that I've made since, you've been on the show and with other women as well, going braless. But my cyst disappeared, my stretch marks disappeared, I have no pain, menstrual pain, no breast pain. Did I mention my stretch marks? Yeah, did they tone and lift a bit too? They've actually lifted. I mean, and they've got a long ways to go. Don't get me wrong. I'm definitely not a 20-year-old spring chicken or, there's some sag in there, but it was worse before I went braless. So I'm just really looking forward to what's going to happen. I know those studies that they had, I guess there was a 15-year study in France, which is absolutely ridiculous. Of course, they try to turn him into a pervert and, oh, what a creep, blah, blah, blah. But, he actually measured that the breast lifts an average of 7 millimeters each year. So, hey, look at 10 years from now, I'll be 20 again, or at least my breasts will be. Well, that's the thing. The fact that bras caused the breasts to droop was something that is intuitively obvious if you think about it. Like anytime you have an artificial support, the natural support mechanisms aren't being used and they get weak. Just like if you had your arm in a sling, your muscles would get weak. Well, the suspensory ligaments that support the breast get weak. But, doctors, the industry has been selling bras to prevent droop, and that's why a lot of women even sleep in them. And it's killing them, and it's not achieving the goal. It's total BS salesmanship. Totally. Hold that right there, though, Sydney, because it is that time. But we will be right back after this short break. Stay tuned, everyone. SoulJourneysRadio.com.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarian. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American
It's practically narcotics.
Freedom
Oh, yes, I like very much.
Radio.
They're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Welcome back, and thanks again for joining us here tonight with Sidney Ross Singer here on SoulJourneysRadio.com. Again, his website is killerculture.com. I've been posting some of his articles in the text chat at SoulJourneysRadio.com if you would like to join us. And we left off talking about the breast myth and, some of the studies that had come out recently. And, you and I were talking during the break about the Harvard study, the Chinese study, or the China study, and then, of course, the Venezuelan study, which has basically vindicated you, proved everything you've been telling us the last couple decades are, in fact, true. So
Yes, it's very exciting, but it's still being suppressed. It'll be interesting to see this year how the cancer industry, how many myth articles they put out calling the breast cancer link a myth. They still refuse to deal with it. And their refusal is so sinister and clearly a sign of their own a cover-up, because they look at everything with breast cancer. I mean, there's been such weird research on this, hair straighteners, and whether you're right-handed or left-handed. There's all, whether you live near power poles. They've looked at all sorts of things with breast cancer. They refuse to look at the bra, literally. They literally say that this is too ridiculous to even deserve consideration. And that's the American Cancer Society, the Susan G. Komen, the Canadian Cancer Society, which is linked. They're all linked, and even the National Cancer Institute, which is controlled by them. So those cancer experts say that this doesn't even deserve to be thought about. So it's obvious what's going on. I mean, this is a cover-up, and they don't want to admit their failure. The fact that I'm a medical anthropologist outside of their fold is really another embarrassment to them.
Oh, yeah.
And how are they going to explain all the research on breast cancer that ignored the bra? It's like looking at studying lung cancer and ignoring if you smoke cigarettes, or studying foot disease and ignoring if you wear tight shoes. It's the thing that we're doing to our bodies. But medicine doesn't think about people as individuals, and it doesn't even think about us as cultural entities. It thinks about the human body in a biological vacuum. And look, even breasts, talking about breasts, they are one of the most culturally impacted organs that we have. We do so much to breasts, and, we push them, squeeze them, stuff them, pluck them, pierce them, tattoo them, suck them, make them bigger, make them smaller, do all sorts of stuff with breasts. They are so culturally conditioned that any discussion of breasts should have to consider the culture of the women, so you know how they treat them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what are we dealing with? Are we dealing with women who never wore bras? In cultures where they don't wear bras, they don't have breast cancer. It's like background. The men and women have about the same rate. As soon as you go to bra-wearing cultures, the tighter and longer they wear them, the higher their rates. And, cultures that never had them before, like in Southeast Asia, their rates are skyrocketing. And their women are now wearing them like 24/7, and they feel obligated to wear bras when 30 years ago they didn't wear them because they were not part of Eastern fashion. But as the West proliferates and spreads, all the working women and the professional women, they start to have an image that they have to look like a Western woman. And Western dress requires the bra. And, so that aspect of the culture is, and the medical industry doesn't want to challenge that. They don't want to challenge the lingerie industry. And the lingerie industry is now funding breast cancer research. They have foundations now. They've raised, it's like cigarettes. The cigarette industry is tobacco, funding lung cancer. They do. These industries want to fund the research into the cancers that they're causing because it makes them look like the good guy. And most importantly, get ready for this. It means that if you're a researcher reliant on their funding, they let you know basically what their agenda is and what's politically correct or incorrect. When the American Cancer Society says that this doesn't deserve to be looked at, then every researcher who has a grant or wishes to have a grant from the American Cancer Society will not want to look at this because it means they're going against this granting institution's objectives, opinion, and then they'll have their grants. And I've been told by doctors explicitly that they can't look at this because they'll lose their funding and they'll be blacklisted. So when you're living in a world, and these doctors are in a world of pharmaceutically controlled medicine where the research is into early detection and treatments, not into prevention by changing your lifestyle. I mean, that is like it takes you out of the market, right? If you don't get these diseases, you're out of the market. So their whole goal is to detect and treat, and the research is focused just on that. And if anybody gets out of line, they are blacklisted. And I felt that when I was in medical school.
Yeah, I think weren't you interviewed for a program or something, and they kind of cut you out, or? No, I don't. Maybe I was. There was some things that I was interviewed for. Some like Spanish Elle magazine once did a story, but then they killed the story because because of their advertisers. Yeah, there was one I probably told you about. It was now that I'm thinking about it. God, there's so much has happened in this issue over 30 years. 20 years. There was an NBC Dateline back in 1995. Yeah, that was an interesting story. Our book, when Dressed to Kill first came out, the publisher, who was Avery Publishing Group, that's subsequently been taken over by Penguin Putnam, they sold the advanced publication rights to the National Enquirer. So the National Enquirer paid a certain amount of money to the publisher to be able to print a story about the book Dressed to Kill, about to come out in 1995. So they got like the first scoop, and newspapers like that. So my publisher made that deal with them, and it was a beautiful 2-page spread, and it was actually very good and very accurate, surprisingly. And it got the attention of someone at NBC Dateline. They wanted to basically poke fun at the whole idea. And the producer actually found a medical historian who agreed with me and said it was wonderful that we've resurrected the lymphatic system, because back in the 20s and 30s, they knew that the lymphatics were associated with cancer. But since then, they forgot. Because after that, the pharmaceutical industry took over. As soon as they got into antibiotics and all the modern drugs, then a lot of things were forgotten, especially if they can't be treated with drugs. They have no drugs to just treat your lymphatics. So they can't treat them, and they can't do surgery really on them except to pull out lymph nodes. So what they do is they treat the lymphatics as if they're the enemy, how disease spreads, instead of treating it the way it really is, which is your immune system. And if it's So medicine is very bad with the lymphatics. And anyway, so the story was being done on Dateline. It wasn't being done yet. She was still doing her research, and she was calling me daily and getting information. And as she started getting support
for this. It's like, hey, this could be true. This makes, some people are supporting us. Suddenly she told me the story was killed. And the reason was, and she explained it, that NBC is owned by General Electric. General Electric has a policy that Dateline can't do any, this is back in the 90s policy, it might have changed, I don't know, probably not, but that they couldn't do any stories that impacted any of their associated, under their umbrella industries. And it just so happens that General Electric also makes mammography machines.
Yeah. How convenient.
So they didn't want a story that basically says it's your bra, you don't need to go for mammograms. I mean, they scare women into the mammograms, which is a big experiment, by the way, and not only does it cause cancer, but there's so many false readings, and it's not preventing. I remember in medical school, they were talking about mammograms as a test to see if it'll have an effect on reducing the incidence, and it hasn't. And it just makes, and it looks like everybody's had it, because the more testing that's done, it becomes in vogue, especially when they can start looking at precancers, and they, so it's like the more you test, the more you find things. And it makes it look like we have this huge epidemic that's even worse than it probably is, because everyone's testing for it and interpreting it as positive. It becomes like a fashionable disease in medicine to treat, and it becomes hugely profitable. So the mammograms are part of that. It's a huge part of it. Mammography is a huge profit maker. And the way they sell the mammograms, which are uncomfortable to get, they have to sell them. And they sell them. They sell them with fear. So, it's they don't want to admit that they don't necessarily help. And, of course, once they see them with the mammogram, you got cancer. I mean, you can't prevent it with a mammogram. So they were thinking, in the lack of prevention, we do early detection. So that's the philosophy in general of medicine. They don't worry about the prevention, because that may, it takes them out of control. They know, for example, you can prevent lung cancer with stopping cigarette smoking, although it took like 30 years to get medicine to admit that. And doctors were selling cigarettes in the 50s. They were promoting like Camel, and medical people were saying cigarette smoking is good for you. And it took 30 years to change that. Medicine doesn't like dealing with lifestyles. They can't control your lifestyle. They can't tell you how to eat. They can tell you, but they can't guarantee any of the controls. So we have this relationship with medicine that we do whatever we want to do and whatever we're told to do by the advertisers. And if we get sick, we go to medicine so they can detect it as soon as possible so they can treat it right away. And medicine keeps out of the business of lifestyle. They're not there to prevent, an analogy I give is, if you think about a medic in war, the medic, his job is to go out and patch people up. And if you ask that medic, how can we prevent all of these traumas and all of these problems that you're dealing with? I mean, you're just treating the problem. How do you prevent all of this? He'd say, end the war. But they can't end the war. All they can do is patch you up and put you back out there. Well, that's exactly what medicine does in civilian life. They patch us up from what we do to ourselves because of these damaging lifestyles, and then they put you back out. They're not there to question your lifestyles or to, tell you how to live. Now, with Obamacare and with with these type of mandates, they may get more and more intrusive, and they may start telling you, like in New York, you can't have drinks of a certain size. The food can't have so many trans fats. And you start getting these increased interventions in your lifestyle that'll be rationalized as disease prevention, which frankly scares me from a freedom point of view. How much do we want the government to tell us what to do if they decide, like, cigarette smoking is bad for you, so you can't smoke anymore? I mean, by law. That would be scary. And I think...
Well, I'd say they just leave the tobacco alone, because, I mean, even look at Walter Reed Army Medical Clinic. They boast over 50 medicinal uses for natural tobacco. But, hey, we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to put 4,000 chemicals in it, over 200 of which known carcinogens, and then tell you it's bad. Well, of course it's bad now. But leave the plant alone.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of that. It's so messed up. And one of the problems I see is in people making there's information overload right now. I think people start to feel like if we say bras cause breast cancer, if a woman doesn't want to believe that, she'll go into denial mode. And,
well, they'll just say, well, I don't have cancer. Okay, well, yeah, maybe.
Or my or my mother wore a bra and she didn't get breast cancer, or not every woman is going to get breast cancer. Well, it's never 100% all or nothing, and it's not just one thing that causes breast cancer or cancer in general. But, people will rationalize because they don't want to change their lives. They don't want the inconvenience that it's going to cause to actually be different from others, to say no and reject social norms that are unhealthy. I mean, if you lived in a corset time, like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, you wouldn't be seen dead without your corset. You wouldn't go out without your wig. You would be like, I could be seen dead without my wig. Now we don't, and then remember, and then there was the hats. You look at all these old movies from the 40s and the 50s and 30s. They didn't go out, nobody went anywhere without his hat. Mm-hmm. And now we don't wear hats like that anymore. But I'm sure if you wore hats, the more we wore them, there'd be a lot of heat frustration. There might be more strokes. There might be more other issues caused by overheating because you're covering up your head because of a cultural thing. Or the corsets, they were killing women because of constriction. Well,
don't talk about that, though. What's
right.
funny is, like, even, everything you're explaining about the medical industry and all of their connections and everything, it's the same in the lingerie industry, as you point out in your article, where the CEO, bra maker Playtex, explained we have no evidence that wearing a bra could prevent sagging because the breast itself is not muscle, so keeping it toned up is an impossibility.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarian. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
News and information you can trust. This is American Freedom Radio. Freedom, American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
All right, welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us here tonight. You have shared so much important information with us here tonight, Sydney, so I thank you for that. Again, his website is killerculture.com. You can connect to the Self-Study Center there, and some of the self-studies he has going on right now are migraine, sleep apnea, glaucoma, breast pain, cysts, cancer, bladder infections, kidney stones, diverticulitis, PMS cramps, thyroid issues, which we'd like to talk about, and much, much more. So go to killerculture.com, and he has a Facebook page, the Institute for the Study of Culturogenic Disease. So that's at Facebook.com/culturogenic disease. Like, comment, share, tell your friends, tell your family. I mean, one thing I've noticed is people, like when we walk up to someone and say, hey, that might not be the healthiest thing, you could be choosing to do right now. That's a quick way to lose friends and family members, get your head chopped off. But when you have an article or something where someone else is saying it, it's easier to just, wow, have you seen this? You can kind of play dumb and then just post one of Sydney's articles, and, you're kind of planting seeds here. So, go check it out on Facebook again. It's facebook.com/ /culturogenic disease, and his website, again, killerculture.com. Here we are, last segment, and it looks like we have a caller on the line, so let's see what they have to add. Area code 630. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for taking my call. It all started back when they passed the law that it was free for you, if you go to a hospital, they got to treat you. And I'm like, you know what? I step back. I always step back. I always do. And I'm thinking, well, how can this be? Well, they did that. Well, the answer to that, how could this be, is Obamacare, because they're going to make everybody pay. They didn't address the where the money's going to come from for $5,000 X-rays or $100 aspirins. They didn't do that. They're just going to force everybody to get this, okay? And for guys, not only guys like me, not exactly me, but there's people that got to feed their kids, pay their mortgage. They got bills. They got expenses to pay that are much more important, and maybe they can live a healthy lifestyle like I have. I'm getting a little older now, but I take care of myself. And I have money in case I break a leg, but that probably is not going to happen because I'm not going to allow it to happen. But if it did, I have the cash on the side to take care of that in case, that does happen. But furthermore, I take care of myself, my cholesterol, everything, and I guess I'm fortunate. But for the people that are healthy, that's a forced tax, okay? And he's telling me and everybody else, you're going to go and sign up for the Western system that does just what your guest said it does. And anyway, it just makes me just totally irate and upset that the government's just completely taking over with this. But it's all a scam, and, there's going to be a lot more scams. I don't know how they're going to pull this off, by the way, making people sign up for exchanges. It's, anytime the government gets involved with anything, it goes to where. HELL.
I think you made a good comment, and I want to say something about. I think one of the problems with the whole Obamacare approach is that all we're arguing about is how to pay for it. We're not arguing about what are we paying for. What are we doing? Why are we, and I hear what you're saying. I wanted to raise the point. There was an interesting article that came out recently that I think it was in Washington State where they gave Medicare to some poor people, and there was a group, they had to use a lottery because they didn't have enough money to give it to all the poor people. So they gave it to some and not others who had Medicare for a couple of years. And it was assumed that these people who didn't have any health coverage, now that they were covered with Medicare, they would be healthier. Well, they discovered after 2 years that they are no healthier. And, it was being picked up by anti-Obamacare people as an example that we don't, that it isn't going to necessarily, that it's not that everybody needs more Medicare. To me, the message was even deeper. It's that medical care is not working. The kind of things that we are paying for is not getting us anywhere. And I agree with you. I object to being taxed to pay for something that I don't even believe in.
Right. I suggest money situations to people. I suggest, any kind of medical that I know about. Like I told you, I know about cholesterol because I took care of myself. I take plant sterols, fish oils. I altered my diet. I did the research. I'm willing to share that. Okay, but you know what? A lot of times people don't want to be shared. They don't want it. You can't tell people what to do. You just can't do it. You got to leave people to be free to make their own.
People who want it, yeah, they should have it. But I certainly don't think anybody should be forced into it. I mean, my perspective is my health is my responsibility, period. Keep the heck out of my business.
That's one question I wanted to ask your guest. I heard it. All this is starting to unfold. But how much information? I'm not telling the government anything about me. All right. That's none of their business. Okay. I'm not telling the IRS, especially the IRS. It's none of their business about my cholesterol or my whatever. Do I drink coffee or how many beers do I drink a week? It's nobody's business but mine. I heard they're going to be, we're going to have to fill out a bunch of forms, and then you're going to turn those forms in, and somebody's going to steal your identity, I'll bet. Yeah.
Well, maybe. I think there's a lot to be concerned about, but I'm just trying to address the cultural issues that are causing disease, and what you're saying. I want to caution you. I think you should be applauded like everybody else who takes responsibility for themselves. But be really careful what you read on the internet, what research you believe. You got to really look at the research. There's so much crappy research. And when you look at how they're doing it and what their results are, research these days is really used for salesmanship, as a sales tool to promote a product. And this is all research. You got to really look at. And I have an advantage in having an educated background to just pick up the research and make sense of it. But most people really need to get that education. We should all be able to assess. Don't just believe something because it's a study. And if you look at, even if it's peer-reviewed, that doesn't mean anything. That just means it has the union label. It doesn't mean it's good research. So like you were saying, the cholesterol thing or fish oils or this or that, and even when you're getting into alternative products, all of these industries are making money off of people's fears and ignorance. I think the biggest thing is to listen to your body and to learn how to, we really, most of the time our body takes care of itself. But, there is a very difficult discussion that we should have sometime, not today, about what do you do when it's time to go. I mean, we are all assuming. I don't want to be like, oh, nature is always benevolent and great and you'll always be healed. I mean, we do die. We do get sick and get diseases. There is a reality. There is some, we have to deal with that discussion. And I think in our culture, there's a complete death phobia. I mean, complete. And in the past, people were much more accepting of death. They discussed it. They had poetry about it. They had imagery to support it. They thought of the angel of death in a positive way, releasing people from suffering. And all of that is a completely past world. In today's modern world, we want to be plugged in until the end, and if necessary, freeze my genes and genetically modify me and clone me into the future. We refuse to accept certain natural limitations that feeds medicine, because they rape you financially in the last few months of your life. That's when you lose your money. That's when they get you. And that's go ahead.
No, this guy Obama, he has no business, let people take care of their own health care, and buy their own, or let them do what they, get the prices under control. He gave Monsanto the ticket to go ahead and use their pesticides, and anytime anybody wants to go ahead and make a claim against them, they're protected now because of this guy. Who is this guy? What is this government? I thought it was the people here. It's not. It's something else, Well,
you better watch what you say, though, because you might get audited by the IRS. So.
Yeah. Well, it's coming. It certainly is. I got a letter from them. They took. I had to say, it was a good letter. It meant I owed them no money, but I had to pay them. I'm paying like 75% taxes to them. That's another story. There's a lot of things we need to talk about. I appreciate you bringing that up about our culture. We're living in a culture of death. We are. But we won't face it.
Yeah, we definitely are. Caller, I am so sorry. This has to end now because I hear the music and get cut off. But thank you so much for bringing up all these very important points.
Thank you.
Ross Singer has been our special guest tonight. His website is killerculture.com. And the caller was so right. We're in a culture of death, and you've really done so much here, Sydney, at educating us all, not just here on the show, but all the work you've done the past several decades. So I want to thank you again for that. And we did have some other things to talk about, so maybe we can bring you back next week and kind of finish that up. But thank you for another fine show, Sydney. You're always a pleasure.
Well, same here. I enjoyed doing it with you, and I'll come back soon.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all for joining us.
It's time to get real and heal. MyTrueEssence.net would like to tell you about Modifiland brown seaweed extract. It's composed of an elementally rich seaweed called laminaria. It takes 40 pounds of laminaria to make just 1 pound of Modifiland. There's nothing else like Modifiland. It is the richest in alginate, fucoidin, organic iodine, and lamarian. Alginates are the most effective organic element in nature that enable the body to rid itself of heavy metals, radioactive elements, and toxins. Fucoidin is an extremely effective anti-cancer substance found abundantly in brown seaweed. Organic iodine is the greatest protection for the thyroid offered by nature. Laminarin aids in the prevention and treatment of cardiovascular disease. Go to www.mytrueessence.net and click the Modifiland banner to get started on your path to rich health today. Also check out the Healing Shop for proven essential oils, medicinal teas, and even health coaching. It's time to get real and heal. Go to www.mytrueessence.net.
Get real and heal. Listen to Christie on Soul Journeys Radio.
You're listening to the future of talk. American Freedom Radio. This is American Freedom Radio.